Hi, I'm Ryan F. Gassian, and in this video I want to talk about Syria. Now, you've probably heard on the television that the Assad government used chemical weapons on its own citizens. At this point, I would like to say that we should just all calm down. A lot of people are talking about going to war, about bombing Syria. And I ask you, what goals do you want to achieve? Also, do we know for sure that Assad did it? We have to remember that Syria is very complicated. It's not just Assad versus his people. Saudi Arabia's in there, Iran's in there, Russia's in there, the US is in there, the other Gulf states are in there. And they're all supporting their own groups. Iran and Russia are supporting Assad. Saudi Arabia, the other Arab states, and the US are supporting the anti-Assad forces. Some of whom include Al-Nusra Front, which is basically an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. Not to mention there's ISIS. Not to mention there's the Kurds. Not to mention there's Turkey. There's a lot of forces at play. And Assad's not the only one with chemical weapons. Some of the anti-Assad forces also have chemical weapons, and most of them can't be described as moderates. I know that the West likes to portray the anti-Assad forces as moderates. Well, most of the moderates have left the country. Why do you think there's a big crisis in Europe right now when it comes to refugees? Because all the moderates left the country. Wouldn't you, if your country was being bombed to hell, wouldn't you want to get out there? I know I would. So, in this kind of chaos, we don't know what is actually going on. I'm not saying that Assad isn't capable of gassing his own people. The guy's a monster. As the war was starting, he allowed fanatics he knew was going to eventually fight him, out of his prisons. Why would he do that? Well, because he wanted to make it harder for the West to get involved. Because as much as we would like to support the rebels against Assad, we're not going to support them if we find out that most of them are psychopathic monsters who would slit our throats. We had that last time in Afghanistan. I'm not talking about Afghanistan when Bush was in power. I'm talking about the Afghan war against the Soviets. We supported the Afghanis. We supported the Mujahideen. And what happened? The Mujahideen turned into Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda committed 9/11. So supporting them isn't exactly the best idea. And that shows you what kind of person we're dealing with Assad. He's a monster, but he's a very crafty and pragmatic monster. He knows who's his greater threat. And his greater threat is the West. So he wants to discourage us from getting involved. That's partly why I'm uncertain whether this is Assad or not. Because think of it from Assad's point of view. Just a few days ago, Trump said he was going to leave Syria. And he's winning the war. Now, you use chemical weapons as the last resort. They're not the first thing you use. Especially if you're winning the battle. Because one, there's blowback. You're going to upset the world community. And that's the last thing you need. Two, you're only inviting more trouble. Now, if you're on your last legs, if you're about to lose the war, then it makes perfect sense why you might resort to using chemical weapons. And again, I'm not saying that I don't think Assad would use chemical weapons. I think he would. But he's not on his last legs. It's not like he's in a situation where he has nothing else to lose. He has everything to lose. Trump, who said he was going to get out of Syria, is now saying he's going to get back in. He's re-energized his enemies, giving them international support. It makes no sense from his point of view to use it. And this is rarely brought up in Western media. There's a few people who've done it. The Young Turks, Secular Talk, Tucker Carlson, believe it or not, from Fox News, he brought it up. But other than that, nobody wants to talk about it. They all assume that Assad did it. And again, until there's more evidence, we can't make that assumption. Even Defense Secretary Mattis says he can't confirm that the Assads were behind it. And given that there are so many players involved, and so many various factions. And we do know that some of the other factions have chemical weapons. It's possible another faction used it because they want to get the U.S. back in. They heard that the U.S. is going to leave and they said, well, we need to do something to get them back in. Performing a false flag operation with chemical weapons is one way to do it. If that's the case, it could be al-Nusra Front. It could be one of the anti-Assad forces. Again, they're not angels. The moderates have already left the country. And if it is proven that Assad is the one behind it, then yes, we might consider actions. But what kind of actions? And this goes back to, what are our goals with Syria? If we get rid of Assad, who are we going to replace him with? What role does Russia play in this? Because I can promise you, Russia's not going to let us overthrow Assad without a fight. And we don't want a war with Russia. Is it simply getting rid of the chemical weapons? Well, we've already gone down that route before. Remember, Assad is supposed to have no more chemical weapons. So what happened? What went wrong the first time? Did he acquire new chemical weapons? And if so, where did he get them? Or did he only give us some of his chemical weapons? Prudency is required. We need to take a breather and ask ourselves, what's the next step? Because dropping bombs isn't going to get us anywhere. That might make the shareholders of Raytheon and Boeing and GM happy, because every time a bomb is dropped, they're making money. And who do you think is the advertiser to some of these media outlets? Raytheon, Boeing, and GE. So you can't say that the media is 100% neutral on this. They do have a bias. And at this point, it is foolish to make the assumption that Assad did it. Again, he could very well have done it. But until we know for sure, we should have a level head about this. Because if we take the wrong actions, this is only going to make the situation worse. And we have to remember, on the other side is Russia. And we do not want to get into war with them. Thank you for listening. And please help my channel by liking this video and subscribing. Oh, and visit my website at www.darknessinamerica.com to read my short stories about a future United States where people live in fear of inquisitors, telepathic assassins who police the populace for thought crimes.